Hinduism is considered one of the oldest still practicing religions of the world. The origins of Hinduism have yet to be officially discovered of the when and the where. The term Hinduism was formed based on the theory that all people speaking the same language must belong to a single race and religion. Due to centuries of religious militant attacks and the British rule, the term Hinduism that we all know today was formed. Hinduism today is based on structure, rituals, and rules. Hinduism then evolved into the theory that Marx states where elites control the masses through religion. With the influence of the British Raj quickly fading into history, the newer generations of Hindus are heading to a more Sanatanadharma and away from the structured conservative version of Hinduism that they were raised in. Sanatanadharma is the original practice of Hinduism. This practice preaches more straightforwardly that religion is what you make it. The only rule to do is to do good to others as an individual. Sanatanadharma preaches the practices of honesty, refraining from injuring living beings, purity, goodwill, mercy, patience, forbearance, self restraint, generosity, and asceticism. The main difference between the Sanatanadharma and Hinduism is the class and caste systems do not apply. The original practice was the primary influence in Swami Vivekananda's famous speech on one universal religion. This shift in returning to the original Sanatanadharma practice is doing precisely what Weber has said about how religions can shake up societies. India is progressing like wildfire, and there has been this in between society of older conservative views of Hinduism, such as rituals, caste systems, and arranged marriages, and the more accepting liberal views of the Sanatanadharma. Open mindedness, critical thinking, and questioning why such things, such as caste systems, are taking place. In this documentary, I will interview my husband Deepak, who is a practicing Hindu but is a practicer of the Sanatanadharma.
I grew up in a city called Pune. It's in Maharashtra state of India. Uh, I am a practicing Hindu. Uh, Essentially, my background is I've grown up in that city. Essentially, went to a Catholic school since kindergarten. My parents are both practicing Hindus. Like I said, I've been exposed to that, but at the same time, it's kind of different because in school I was exposed to Catholicism as well. But at home, I was exposed to all the uh, usual Hindu rituals and practices. Uh, Personally, I'm more of a liberal Hindu. I believe Hinduism, essentially at its heart, is accepting of all life forms. Essentially, we are. It's not called Hinduism. Hinduism is more of a Western term. Uh, true, my religion is called the Sanatan Dharma. Essentially, we believe that the whole world is one family, and we try and follow that. We are accepting of everybody's ideas and religions and everything, and I try and follow most of that. And that's one thing really kind of that attracted me towards America is because I thought, at least living in India back then, is America was more liberal than what India is. Coming back to that point, where my parents are more conservative in their religious beliefs and practices. So we have been at we have had differences in terms of what they think the religion is versus what I think the religion is, but we have learned to coexist. My one more peculiar thing about my background is India has like official 26 languages, and I am a Maharashtrian since I've come from the state of Maharashtra. So that is one more regional identity, like I associate with myself. Because I come from that region or that part of India. Uh, I also belong to the warrior caste, so the Kshatriyas. Essentially, my forefathers used to be warriors when there was war or when it was needed, and then farmers when used to during the monsoon season because that's when where most of the farmers would farm and grow their crop. So that's what my caste is essentially in India, back in India. Yeah. and this is what my observations are. Maybe they're not super broad because I've lived in a city all my life. Maybe they are a little more conservative in the more rural parts of India, but from what I've observed in my age group, essentially they are more of a practicing Hindus than traditional Hindus who are blindly following rituals and practices. We all will go to a temple and do all the rituals or essentially practices we have, but most of that would be kind of to please our parents or just to be part of the community. More people in my generation are kind of going back to the more liberal views of Hinduism, I feel. Also, we are cutting back on what we will be doing in our generation. So, a Diwali at my parents' home looks uh, more about the gods and what they learned from their parents. And Diwali at my home now looks more as a celebration of lights and the win of light or good over evil. And I try and emphasize that fact when I celebrate all these religions and make sure I'm not tied down to the rituals that have been followed blindly. And maybe if I come across some rituals that make sense to me, I will follow them. But I'm more inquisitive and I question everything rather than just blindly following. That's the difference, really. I don't believe I have had terrible experiences. There are not as many temples in the US compared to India, but there are a few. I think there are a couple in Milwaukee, and then there are plenty in the Chicago suburbs. So, not felt like there are no temples for me to go and worship. Uh, However, I have had I don't want to say questions that offend the religion per se because like I said, the Hindu religion is more of accepting of all life forms and ways of life. But I've had questions which were kind of uh, insensitive about my religion, and that's one thing that has kind of stuck with me is when I come across people who ask questions that really don't understand the religion, but they're assuming things based on their experiences or what they see on television, maybe sometimes, or see in yoga, because that's widely popular in the US, and try and generalize what they understand of the religion. That's something that I come across, which is uh, it kind of makes me want to correct them and explain to them what the true religion is. But it seems like all my attempts of doing that have been in vain because mostly people want me to mostly confirm what their beliefs are versus try and explain what true Hinduism is. Because I've experienced that people cut off kind of they're not too keen on learning about it versus just assuming things. Uh, but I think mostly is cultural appropriate or religious appropriation, I would call it, wherein they will assume all Indians will be Hindus, wherein Hindus are probably uh, 80% of the population. We have in India, we'll have so many religions. It's Muslims are, I think, 20%, close to 20%, and then a lot of Jains, Buddhists, uh, a few other religions as well, which we'll have there. So a lot of assumptions are based on the country you're coming from and really not well thought of. I will get questions around why don't we eat cow and all that, and it's not more about your food choices. It's essentially a mental block in my head because my parents have always and me well as I was growing up around all the Hindu practices, we worship the cows. So it's kind of a mental block for me to personally go and eat a burger, which I know is gonna be beef. So yeah, that's really the one thing that stands out. So we have gods that are like transgender. Like I don't know what that name is in Hindi, but in Sanskrit it's called Ardhanarishwar, which means it's half man, half woman, and there is a god that people can worship. Like I said, like Hinduism is supposed to be all accepting of all types of people, sexual orientations, everything. So I'm super accepting of it, and I believe that everybody can and should express themselves the way they feel from within versus what the society slaps onto them as a label. Uh, but I will say I've seen a lot of transgender people not treated well in my community, maybe because of lack of knowledge and understanding of what transgenders people are and how they are different, yet not so different. So I think it comes from a place of lack of understanding versus really biases around those people. But I personally have no biases around transgender or any kind of sexual orientation, or people from any kind of sexual orientation. No specific roles. Like I said, there are 10 millions of gods in Hinduism. Essentially, if you are a strong-willed woman, there is Kali, who has killed bad people in wars. If you are somebody who is an intellectual, there is Saraswati, like who is the god of wisdom. So essentially, Hinduism kind of morphs or gives you the flexibility to worship a certain god under the pillars of Hinduism based on how that person is. So it kind of, you can make up your god which suits more of your personality. Like if I'm a man and I'm into bodybuilding and strength and training and all that, then I can worship Hanuman. If I'm a god who is super smart, I can worship. I'm a guy who's super smart and I'm always thinking intellectually and all that. I can worship Ganesha. So I think Hinduism kind of gives you a little more flexibility in terms of how you perceive God to be versus worshiping one God. No offense to any religion, but I like that, like having that flexibility, and I think it just opens up a lot more options for people in terms of finding their own niche and worshiping that God, uh, as long as they follow the basic tenets of Hinduism. So I know Hinduism has the whole karma cycle wherein you do more good than bad, and eventually, after taking multiple lives as a human being, you will finally attain moksha. So you'll be one with God, which is the final salvation per scripture. I don't know about other lives. I'd like to believe I have this one life as a practicing Hindu. I will try and do more good than bad. I will try and make other people's life better who are around me, and I'm hoping that that's my one path to salvation, versus having to take rebirths after rebirths. So that's my belief around salvation. Is I don't think you you're born again, but essentially, since I have this one human life, I'm going to try and do all I can to make my life better and do more good than bad for people around me. There is a there is so there is no specific there is not one authority figure when it comes to Hinduism. Like maybe for Catholics you have the Pope, and for Buddhist, is that Buddhist for the Tibetan religion? I forgot. But they have one figurehead. Hinduism doesn't have one figurehead per se, but you will have priests. And Hindus, I think, will trust that the priest has the knowledge of the scriptures and knows what he's talking about. And mostly they won't go to the priest for, personal advice or family advice or repent for their sins and stuff like that. They will go to the priest for performing ceremonies. Again, like I said, not everybody understands what the ceremonies do or what they are saying in the ceremonies. It's more of a belief that they know what they're talking about. And then there are some godmen, which I guess is again due to lack of understanding, and there is a lot of poverty in India. So I think a lot of people will look to godmen to be that one solution to all their problems, and there are people who take advantage of people like that. So th- there is no one authority figure in my head. There are people who are good people who know the scriptures and who will do good things with it. And then there are people who will pretend to be godmen and try and take advantage of people too. So that's where I stand essentially. There's no clergy in my head, at least. Yeah, so I will try and, first of all, in Hinduism, there are a lot of days that are dedicated to the way of life back when it wasn't a modern society. So I'll start you with with ones that come as soon as you start the year. So in January, February timeframe, you have a festival for uh, uh, harvest. So most of the winter crops you'll harvest during that time, and then it's a offering to the gods of having a good harvest. I know there are other forms of the same practice and ritual in maybe other religions or other places, but that's one ritual that we do is we will make food out of basic grains that are typically grown in farms, and then we'll offer it to the gods, various gods that we worship, and then we'll do that. Another big one is, I think the one that I like the most is Holi, which is, again, it comes from scripture from Mayana where Lakshman uh, uh, killed a devil, and essentially it's celebrated as again the burning of evil, and then in Holi people will burn wood around the fire. They will be around the fire and uh, give sweets to one another and all that. And then next day we will play with colors and water and all that. So that's one more fun, I would say, practice or ritual that we do. We have Diwali, wherein it's celebrated again as a festival where light won over the darkness, and then yeah, people will wake up early in the morning. It's said that you should be waking up before the first light of the day and taking a bath and everything. And essentially, it's believed that that day the goddess Lakshmi will come and visit your home. So you have to have your house cleaned up top to bottom and be ready, all bathed and everything in the morning. And then you'll distribute sweets to your uh, relatives and friends and families around you, and then you'll burst some crackers at the end of the day after offering some puja for goddess Lakshmi, and then you'll burst crackers just celebrating the fact that that festival is supposed to be more light and around surrounding light. So we'll try and do that. I think it's not just about Hinduism, but all religions essentially talk about ethics. And like in Catholicism, you be nice to your neighbor or do good by your neighbor, right? So similarly, Hinduism will teach about all the things that are morally right to do, and to not steal, be nice to your neighbors, act with dignity, do not cheat, do not lie. The basic same things that all religions wanted to practice. I think Hinduism has the same. Nothing special, honestly. I think Hinduism. One factor about Hinduism that I like, and which is kind of different, is to be more accepting of other religions and other people's faiths, which I try and follow a lot as well.
Surprisingly, even though I've been with my husband for 5 years, these views were something new to me. I have visited India, I visited many Hindu temples, and I had a Hindu wedding. I was familiar with Hinduism and being around it. I had always assumed that my husband was a non practicing Hindu, and while doing this interview, I had learned that that was very much not the case. Even with my exposure to Hinduism, I had just heard of the Sanatanadharma when taking this class and having a very open conversation about religion with my husband. Even I, who would think that I would know all that there is to know about Hinduism, there was little I did know about it. So when it comes to religions that are not your own, do not have preconceived assumptions about religions. Clear your mind and think of anything that you know about it. Stop and listen. And also, namaste.